Hey, what's going on, Melissa?
Hey, hey, what's going on, Jack?
We are back again. How was your holiday weekend or break?
Wow, it was fantastic. Rest, relaxation, some skiing, exhaustion, yet knowing how to rest afterwards while doing the fun things that you don't get to do all the time. And yours?
That break is always a good thing. I spent time with my brother and my nieces, and I had a really great time. Just to enjoy the time off. I worked quite a bit, but that's my nature, and I don't mind that. But I had a really good time, and so welcome back. And you ready for a new year?
I am. I actually can say that I did not work this year. I work every single year in the holiday, and this year I took the break with my son and also my boyfriend and traveled and had some fun, but I was hustling all the way until the break started, and now it's let's get started again and let's crush out 2026.
All right, all right. Well, speaking of 2026, I want to get right into it. And before we talk about what people should do, it's worth slowing down and looking at who they believe they are. In our last podcast, we talked about confidence, and confidence can exist and something can still feel off. That's usually an identity conversation. And that leads us to today's topic about identity. And I was thinking over the break, when someone looks confident, but it still feels off, what do you immediately start listening for as a coach?
I listen for pauses in their story, listen for rigidity in whatever they're saying to me. And I also listen to how much effort it is for them to tell me the story that they're trying to tell me. If they're forcing themselves, then I know that they have some type of identity that they're not believing in. They're just saying the words because these are the words of who they should be and who they think they should be. They're usually over explaining. They're using but or justifying a lot. And they're creating subtle defensiveness through their answers. So if I have to really think about it, they're truly trying to protect who they believe they are. Identity is something that I have leaned into a lot in this past year. And I think about what's the name tags that we carry that we no longer allow ourselves to believe about ourselves, or we're not serving ourselves. So, identity and confidence, it's that rigidity in all of their answers that ask me to go even deeper into what they're saying. But when I hear someone describe themselves and they describe themselves confidently, it comes across differently. How do you know that someone's grounded or they're just being defensive?
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. When I look at an individual or listen to their conversation, I look for how do their words and their actions and behaviors match. A grounded individual is consistent, in my opinion, with how they show up in the world, what they're saying and what they're doing, and it kind of matches across the board. I look for fluidity in their approach, not a rigid or structured approach, but one where they demonstrate certain attitudes and behaviors that's consistent with the outcomes that they want to achieve. I'll give you an example. I had a mom who I was working with at one time. She was sharing with me that she was a business owner, but she wanted to be a good mom. And she struggled with building connection with her daughter. Even though she had a lot of things going on, she really wanted to hone in on building that relationship with her daughter. And as a coach, I had to push back and ask her certain things that would help her understand or lead her to some type of discovery as to is the behavior that you're exhibiting to your daughter matching what you said you wanted in terms of your identity. A good mom listens. A good mom stops and pays attention. A good mom prioritizes the child over work. And as we started to go down that rabbit hole and started to pull back those layers, she started to understand that perhaps she wasn't walking in the right identity lane and that the story she had told herself of what it takes to be a good mom may not have been what her she may not be living up to the identity that she wanted to be in that situation. So I think to me, when I listen to groundedness and having identity, I'm looking for alignment in terms of your behavior and your attitude. And so I want to go back to something you said. You said you look for when a person is rigid. Can you explain more about that, please?
When a person's rigid, so rigidity means that they're having a hard time aligning their behaviors with their actions. And that comes through their words, that whatever they're telling me, and their energy. So none of it matches. So, like you were saying, where is it that the behaviors match the actions? Same thing. Not only your behaviors match your actions, also your words and your energy, because your energy is going to go where your focus is. If their focus is on who they believe they should be, you're going to notice a difference in their energy. You're going to notice a difference in their tonality. You're going to notice a difference in their overall presence and how they show up when they speak, as well as their nonverbal cues. So if I have a client that says they're very, very confident, yet we're talking about them and I'm asking questions about them and who they are and how other people's perceive them. If they start picking at themselves, looking down a lot, sometimes I have some clients get red in the cheeks. I know that there's something more behind it and we need to ask more questions. They're saying what they think I want them to hear and what I want to hear versus what is actually true. Remember that, like, our brain is wired to protect us. So our brain is going to sit in that comfortable zone. Yet, where are we pushing ourselves to the uncomfortable? Part of our conversations between you and I are pushing individuals as well as ourselves to be uncomfortable. And that being uncomfortable part, where is it you can be uncomfortable but be confident in who you are and believe in who you are? I tell people a lot, I go back to this name tag thing and I do this exercise with some clients. Who do we believe we are? Who do we want to be? Who have we outgrown? It is okay to outgrow individuals and within rigidity in our actions, our behaviors, our language. It's just when it doesn't all match up. So,
That's a great perspective. As you're talking, I'm thinking about we're in 2026. We're 4 days into the new year. And I know that people have goals and they're struggling to, or they have a New Year's resolution and they are trying to live into those resolutions. But I heard a statement the other day where it says, you will never outperform your identity. And so as I thought about that statement and thought about 2026, and all the New Year's resolutions that people kind of put in place. How do you see identity align into that? I know we're kind of off topic, but I want to peel that back because I think it's such a key component that people struggle with. How do you see that being impactful to people that you cannot outgrow your identity when 2026 and you build resolutions to get you to where you want to go? But if your identity doesn't grow with you, is it possible for you to reach your goals?
no, the reason why the majority of resolutions fail, people are going in and they're doing a diet on their identity. And a lot of times, diets don't last because you're not changing your lifestyle. So when I say that people are doing a diet, it means that they're looking for a temporary fix. We're doing a resolution, it's a big thing, and everybody wants to go, and I'm going to go to the gym every single day. Now, they haven't been to the gym in 3, 4 years. Their body cannot handle going to the gym every single day. They're building a crash course diet for their body versus, okay, I haven't been to the gym in 3 or 4 years. I want this new habit, a new way of life to be sustained all year. How do I do that? Now, I need to be realistic. I need to maybe bite size it. I need to work 3 days this week. But thinking that you're going to go from 0 workouts to I'm going to work out every day, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to do this, yet you're still going out drinking every night. You're still staying up late. At no point are you truly trying to rewire your brain pathway of saying, hey, this is who I am, and this is how it always is. So we need to go here. Your brain is going to bring you back to what's comfortable. You're forcing something uncomfortable, yet you're forcing it in a way that is not sustainable. So it's funny that you say this with resolutions, because I truly don't believe in resolutions. I believe in how do we create value in the goal that we're trying to set for the year. So my son and I, we do words for the year. How can we choose a word that is going to be our word that we're going to live by for the year? Mine is creativity. How can I lean into creativity within this podcast, within my business, to make myself uncomfortable, to rewire that pathway? My son's a strength. He wants to learn how to study. He wants to learn how to practice more. He wants to become stronger at Ninja, stronger at his skills for studying. And he wants to work on it little by little every single day. So by the end of the year, it is automatically natural that he's studying 2 or 3 days a week, that he's putting that extra time in 2 or 3 days a week for Ninja, whatever that may look like. But living by how can I now encompass this into my core versus, oh, I'm going to do a crash diet and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lose much pounds. Yeah. You have a whole drawer in your desk full of candy and snacks that don't align with your true goal and intention. So your brain is going to go back to the comfortable of, oh, well, hold on. I need a snack. Let me go in this drawer. That's going to combat. Now, why are we working out? What is the purpose?
That's a great perspective. I also believe that in order for you to reach your goals or to make that shift, you have to become somebody or something new, right? Because when I think about identity, I believe that in order for someone to really achieve their goals, they have to see themselves differently before that situation happens. Case in point, in order for me to reach the levels that I did in the military, I had to see myself wearing a stripe before I got to that level or before I ascended in rank. And when I the CEO of my nonprofit foundation, I had to focus on what does that feel like or what does that look like to become a CEO of a small organization to make those things happen. And I think a lot of times people underestimate the power of defining who you want to be and what, to your point earlier, what you have outgrown. Case in point, if I'm an individual that likes to snack and I've been doing this for a long period of time and I don't want to do that anymore, that's one identity that you want to cross off. So now the question becomes, who does that person want to be? I want to be lean. I want to be healthy. And you start framing things in that way to help you move forward out of that old identity into that new identity. Because if, in my mind, if you don't do that, you're going to struggle because of what you said, which is the mind looks for comfortability and old habits. So in order for you to develop new habits, you have to see yourself differently in that moment, in that situation to ascend or grow. And I love what you said about the word piece. I think a word of the year or word of the week is really important because it helps you build small wins and momentum towards achieving your goals. As I sit back and think about that, I was curious to know, do you think capable people avoid slowing down long enough to really look at their identity?
I do. I believe it because it's scary for people to truly look at who they are thoroughly inside and out. It's the same as somebody looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. I don't know if you've ever tried it. And I've had people try it, and it's harder than we think because do they really love everything about themselves? They want to pick themselves apart. Ooh, I don't like it. My arms are flabby, or my stomach's flabby, or I wish I was taller, or I wish I was shorter. There's always something that they look at themselves in that mirror that they're going to find fault in, rather than looking themselves in that mirror and accepting the person that they see on that other side. That is harder for individuals because they're having to have true self-awareness. and self-reflection. So if a person says, I'm not mean, yet their words when they speak to others are cutting people off, they're very curt. The perception on the other side is they may come off a little bit mean. So where are they taking a step back and looking, what does this truly mean? When I think of identity, it's like I had a golfer and he was a kid and he came to, we're on the golf course, we're doing a coaching for my Mind Power, and I play golf with him. And he says, Melissa, I'm tired of being a lazy person. I said, okay. Can you explain a little further why you think you're lazy? He says, because I need to be practicing on Saturdays. I'm already practicing 6 days a week and I'm doing schoolwork, but now I'm falling behind. So I'm not doing certain schoolwork during the week. I'm playing video games about twice a week, maybe for an hour or two at a time. I said, okay. Give me your explanation of what you believe a lazy teenager is. Because remember, he's a teenager that plays golf and we still have to be a kid. He says, someone that doesn't do their homework, someone that's not physically active, someone that doesn't follow through on what they say they're going to do, someone that doesn't help their parents with items around the house. I said, okay, let's go through this list. That's a lazy person. Yes. Do you help your parents with things around the house? Well, yeah, 3 or 4 days a week. Do you do your homework? Yes, some of it's not easy, so it takes me longer and I have to sacrifice other things. Okay. That's a time thing. Yes. But do you get it done? Yes. Do you practice as much as you feasibly possibly can? Yes. Do you deserve a break? Well, yeah, we all deserve a break. Everybody can take a break, and just like you could take a nap or anything else. I said, so do you believe that you're truly lazy or you're having moments of laziness? Where is it that you're claiming an identity of laziness and telling your brain a lie when you're actually truly having a moment of laziness, which isn't laziness, you're relaxing. So you're telling me everything and you're negating by telling me your definition. His aha moment on this, and we were on the green and he was about to putt. He's like, I'm not lazy. I've claimed that I'm a lazy teenager for a long time and I'm really not a lazy person. I'm allowed to relax. Where is it that that identity we're creating in our own mind is not identity that's aligning with our actions? It's coming back to what you were saying earlier. So if you had to tell me, what do you think often shows up as the frustration or the exhaustion for individuals to figure out the clarity themselves on who they are actually versus who they want to see in that mirror?
The challenge is that we're not taught how to step back and to evaluate who we are and how do we see ourselves. A lot of times our identity is given to us by our environment and by parents or people that have the most impact on us. The challenge is, especially with high performers, is that high achievers focus on success and what they think success looks like and what someone's told them that success is. Prime example of a person is told that if you do these 10 things, you'll be successful. Well, those 10 things are not based upon the individual's perspective. It's based upon what was given to them by the individual that you're talking to. And now they're running someone else's program as an identity to help them achieve their goals. I think with high performers and people at most levels, we're not wired to step back and pause. We just continuously grind thinking that what we were told is the gospel or the truth and that we try to lean into that. I think when you're talking about high performers and people dealing with different situations that will allow them to pause, that takes intentionality and it takes self-awareness. And in many cases, we're operating without it. Case in point with the young man that you're talking about, his definition of what being lazy comes from may not be his definition, but the definition of the adults he's around or the environment that he's in. And if he's not taught to pause and to really identify or to define what that laziness definition is for him, then of course he's going to compare himself to what someone else said or didn't say towards him. And I think that's consistent across the board when we as individuals don't pause to really reflect on our lives and what we achieved to understand what identity becomes or where identity came from, that could potentially be an issue for us.
Powerful. And it's true. It's that pause that's harder for us to do because the world keeps moving. Time keeps going. And it's a lot of people are essentially, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. Yet not understanding that pausing to see who they are and their identity and who they believe they are will allow them to truly accomplish that resolution that you were talking about earlier. It's acknowledging that I am that person, not I can be that person or I am not that person. I may or may not be that person, but I am that person that is going to do this. And this is why I want to do it. And having the reason behind of why they want to do something to be their motivator. When we do a lot, and we're going to come back to the resolutions, and we make resolutions, they make the resolution without having the why behind it. Your why is going to be what makes you get up and go do whatever it is that resolution is. For example, work out. Your why is going to be why you get up and go work out. Because I went for a 2-mile run this morning, and Jack, I'm going to tell you, at 6 a.m., I did not want to roll over and get out of bed and go running with gloves and a beanie on and the pitch black. Yet, my why, my health, and my commitment that I made to myself is why I rolled over and got out there. First mile, rough. Second mile, I was golden.
Yeah.
But my why is what motivated me to get out of my bed. And when I hear you talking and hear you coming back to identity and putting it with resolutions and believing and looking at ourselves and truly turning inwards on ourselves, it's because it makes people uncomfortable to truly acknowledge who they are. That uncomfortable is easier to be avoided. The people that come to us are the ones that are knowing that I'm going to be uncomfortable with this situation, but in the end, it's going to make me the person that I want to be. And it's also going to challenge me and push me to limits beyond anything I could have ever imagined. When you are coaching an individual and you see an identity crisis within them, what are some of the signs that you see in order for you to dive in deep and explore more?
My framework is based upon identity. I don't think you can reach your goals without establishing who you need to be for that next level, that evolution. So when I'm listening to an individual and I'm coaching, I get deep into understanding how do they see themselves? Is the identity, is their current identity going to help them achieve their objective? Right? It's like you mentioned your son wanting to be a ninja warrior at the highest level. So if he maintained the same conscientious perspective he has now, is that going to help him grow to get to the next level? 10 chances to one it may, and 10 chances to one it may not. But what you said about what he discovered or what he realized was that he needed to do something or be different in certain ways to become or to achieve his objective. For me, I don't think the why drives the identity as much as it fuels the identity, meaning you can have a purpose, but if you cannot align your identity to that purpose and you cannot become someone else or you choose not to take that on, and this is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, you won't achieve that because what you did got to you to where you're at. But what's required of you to get to the next level or to move on is something different. And where I see this most often is in relationships. People get into relationships and they'll stay stuck, whether it's friendships or men and women relationships or however you want to put it. I think that that's where the challenge comes in many cases. They struggle on how do I separate the two and how do I evolve into that relationship. I noticed that that was one of the most apparent things for me when people coming out of the military, there's a loss of identity. And that loss of identity causes them to become stagnant, become unsure, become uncertain. It causes them to do things that they've never thought about or never thought they would be in that position because there's an identity loss. So for me, identity drives a lot of our attitudes and behaviors unbeknownst to us because no one really talks about who we need to be or what that identity should look like going forward. So in many cases that I've experienced in my own life, when I made a transition, whether I went from being in the military to becoming a school counselor or to becoming a CEO of a company, however those transitions happen, they happen, but I had to take on a different mentality or a different identity to evolve into those roles. I don't think that you can use the same identity to take on different roles. Now, I think here's where I think the situation becomes challenging for certain situations is what do we mean by identity, right? So I want you to kind of share your perspective on what does identity mean to you, and then I'll piggyback on that.
Identity is who I am, what my purpose is, what my passion in life is, what values do I live by, what's important to me as part of myself. A strong mother is important to me. And it's what name tags am I putting on that represent me? So we think about those I am name tags. So mine would be I am a mother. I am strong. I am confident. I am a daughter. Which name tags are you putting on that you want to carry into that next chapter of your life? And part of this conversation and understanding who we are and how identity is acceptance of letting go of who you used to be or an identity that's no longer serving you and being okay with that. We can outgrow who we are. It's just like we outgrow being a baby. We outgrow being a toddler. We were a toddler at one point. Then when we come into being a kid, then we come into being a young adult. We outgrew being that toddler. We outgrew being that young adult. So just because we have something that we are, it might only be for a temporary part of time. So when I think of identity, I think of what name tag am I wearing that represents who I am, inside and out. Now, what do you think identity is?
Identity to me is I'll always be a son, but what kind of son do I want to be towards my mother? What kind of brother do I want to be towards my siblings? So to me, it's more of being very specific and detailed in terms of who you need to be in that current moment. I agree with you that we evolve. I agree with you that in many cases, we outgrow the identity. We just don't realize that we outgrow it, or the environment has outgrown the identity, and we never rise to the level of understanding that we need to be different in the environment that we're in. The same mentality that I had when I was in the military is not the same mentality I had to take it to my civilian life because things operate differently in those environments. So at some particular point in time, you have to do a self analysis and be aware of the impact of what identity is and what you let go. I see that in relationships. I had this conversation with my younger sister one day, 17 years older than my baby sister. And she came home and we had a conversation. She said, well, when I was younger, you always told me what to do. I said, at 17 or at 20, and you're 3 and 4 and 5 years old, I'm supposed to tell you what to do because my job as your brother is to protect you and guide you. As an adult brother, I'm not the same person you knew when you were a baby. I've changed, and now my perspective is to love you and support you. I did it then, but I do it now differently. And so I think identity, a lot of times, because in her conversation, it was apparent to me that she was stuck in a time zone or a frame of reference that she only saw me one way and didn't give herself permission to see me in a different light. I acknowledged that, but I wanted to clarify for her how that identity shifts and what she needed to let go of, not for me, but for the benefit of the relationship. And I think in many cases, we're afraid to recognize, or we choose not to recognize, or we're unaware of how that impacts us in different situations. And I often try to encourage people to ask themselves the question, if you're going to achieve this, then what identity do you have to let go of? And what identity do you have to adopt to become that person that needs to complete that task? And sometimes I'm not sure if that conversation has had enough. I think going from um, school counselor, or I'll give you another example, environments, going from the mainland into Maui, Hawaii, and having to learn the culture. I had to let go of some of the old beliefs and habits I had when I was in Vegas to adopt to a culture in Hawaii to become more successful or to be effective in that environment. So I think at each phase of life or different scenarios, we have to be cognizant of the idea that there needs to be some type of shift in your identity to be successful in those environments. I'll give you another example. I see this quite often with parents. As a coach, when I'm working with youth, I see parents use the word, this is my baby, but your baby's 25 years old and you're treating him or her like a baby. And now in that role, they're still functioning as your baby while you're carrying all the roles and responsibilities and burdens. I'm not going to say that's not healthy, but I would say that that's probably an approach that I would not recommend because to a degree, your frame of reference hasn't changed, but yet life's moved on and circumstances have changed. So I see that quite a bit. I see that often, and I see people struggling with that on a more consistent basis. I also know that in order for an individual to evolve, they need to see themselves differently and really start to focus on their identity and who they need to be given their current situations. You see that in sports. A lot of pro athletes that I've seen, they never grow up, right? Their conversations are the same. They can only talk about the game. And there's so much more to talk about in life and so much more impact. It's not a right or wrong, but it is an awareness thing, in my opinion. And that's kind of how I see the situation. And it's going to make people uncomfortable, right? My brother and I debate this issue all the time. You can't tell me you don't know because at some particular point in time, you have to say to yourself, what do I need to know to become more successful? And when I find out what do I need to know, then the question becomes, who do I need to be and how can I use that information to evolve? And that's an identity shift. It's a purpose shift. It's a desire to get better or to do things differently. And I think a lack of awareness keeps us stuck. And when you begin to focus on your identity in any situation, you will evolve. Last question for you, because I've been thinking about this, and for me, identity is a big part of what I do. Why does simply naming identity feel destabilizing for people? And I know you kind of touched on it a little bit because people don't feel they feel it's uncomfortable. But I want you to go a little bit deeper in terms of what that uncomfortability may or may not feel like and how to get past it.
Exhaustion, something that comes to mind. Because when people are living with an identity that they haven't been able to get past, they get frustrated a lot about their situation. They are tired. They are looking and expecting a different result. So approaching the situation either the same way or even a different way, but coming back to the same result. And yet, I really want to be this person. I really want to be this person. And they keep telling themselves, I really want to be this person. And it comes down to awareness, is pausing to truly self reflect and allow awareness of who you actually are. And like you said, who you want to be. Now, how do I get there? What do I need to do in order to be this person that I want to be? But pausing first to truly reflect on who you actually are. That's where it starts. Then it comes to who do you want to be? And then it's what do I need to do in order to be this person? What
Yeah.
do I need to let go of that's no longer serving me? Whether it's people, whether it's things, whether it's situations, in order to be that person. But pausing for that self reflection and that self awareness is the power and the key to truly lean into identity.
Say that one more time so viewers understand exactly what you just said.
The power of self awareness is the answer to who you are and who you want to be. You have to understand and be aware of your behaviors, your mentality, your actions, and your words, not only on how you perceive them, but how others perceive you in order to truly lean into who you truly are.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So, folks, this is not about fixing identity or redefining yourself overnight. It's about noticing when who you've been no longer fits who you are living. I'm sorry. No longer fits how you're living, who you are living, how you are living. This is Richard Jack, and you are,
Melissa Blue.
and this is two coaches in the truth. See you next time.